One death in the wrong place has ended golden ages, shattered dynasties, ignited world wars, and forced entire empires to reinvent themselves overnight. This is how killing a ruler rewired history itself. Systemic collapse. When a king is the system, killing the king kills everything. In highly centralized empires, power doesn't live in institutions, it lives in one body, one voice, one bloodline. Remove that, and the state doesn't wobble, it caves in. This is called keystone removal, and history is full of it. In 1550, King Tabin Shwethi of the Tungu Empire was assassinated by rival court factions. He ruled the largest empire Southeast Asia had ever seen. Within months of his death, it was gone. Borders dissolved, armies defected, governors became warlords, tax systems vanished, the law stopped existing because the man who embodied it no longer breathed. There was no succession buffer, no bureaucracy to absorb the shock, just a power vacuum that collapsed inward. This is why assassinations are so dangerous to empires built on personal authority. They don't cause chaos, they reveal it. The moment the crown hits the floor, everyone realizes there was nothing underneath holding the state together. What follows isn't reform, it's fragmentation, civil war, invasion. Empires don't usually die slowly. Sometimes they're simply unplugged. But killing a ruler doesn't always erase their power. Sometimes it multiplies it. The martyr paradox. Assassination is supposed to end a problem. Instead, it often upgrades it. Kill a ruler and you might delete a man, but you can accidentally immortalize an idea. This is the martyr paradox, and it has wrecked empires repeatedly. In 1793, revolutionaries executed King Louis XVI to prove monarchy was dead. Public trial, public blade, message sent, or so they thought. Louis didn't disappear, he transformed. Royalists turned him into a sacred symbol. European monarchies treated his death as a crime against divine order itself. France didn't get peace, it got invasion, coalition wars, decades of bloodshed. By killing the king, the revolutionaries removed any chance of compromise. You can negotiate with a man, you can't negotiate with a martyr. His memory became untouchable, purified by death, weaponized by enemies. This pattern repeats endlessly. Assassination freezes a leader at their most powerful emotional moment and hands that image to followers forever. Every failure is forgotten, every flaw erased. What was once a flawed ruler becomes a perfect cause. Empires don't just fight armies after a regicide, they fight ghosts, and ghosts don't surrender. But sometimes the point isn't martyrdom. Sometimes the goal is to kill something far bigger than a king. Ending divine right. For centuries, kings didn't just rule countries, they ruled reality. The doctrine of divine right said monarchs were chosen by God, judged by God, and untouchable by humans. Law ended at the throne. In 1649, England shattered that belief with an axe. King Charles I was put on trial, convicted, and publicly executed. Not assassinated in the dark, executed in daylight. The message was surgical. The king is subject to law. God no longer gets veto power. This single act rewrote political DNA. Once a king could be legally killed, no throne was metaphysically safe again. England didn't collapse, it adapted. Power shifted to parliament. Finance modernized, institutions replaced bloodlines. The empire that followed was flexible, commercial, and terrifyingly efficient. Legal scholars still point to this moment as the birth of modern constitutional government. You can draw a straight line from Charles's execution to parliamentary democracy, global capitalism, and the eventual collapse of absolute monarchy across Europe. One death ended an entire philosophy of rule. But breaking divine authority was still a controlled experiment. Next, an assassination didn't change politics, it detonated the world. triggering global war. Sometimes an assassination doesn't target an empire. It targets the system holding all empires together. In 1914, the murder of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo was not supposed to start a world war. It was meant to scare Austria-Hungary. Instead, it hit a geopolitical tripwire. Alliances snapped into place like loaded mousetraps. Austria moved on Serbia. Russia mobilized. Germany activated war plans. France followed. Britain entered. Within weeks, the entire world was on fire. One bullet didn't cause World War I. The system did. But the assassination exposed how fragile that system was. The result was catastrophic. 4 empires committed suicide: Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, German, and Russian. Borders were redrawn by strangers. The Middle East was carved up with rulers and pencils. Millions died, and the conditions were set for fascism, communism, and World War II. This is the ultimate lesson of royal assassination. When power structures are rigid and alliances are automatic, killing one man can kill millions. Empires don't fall because of assassins. They fall because they're already balanced on a knife's edge. Next, some assassinations weren't accidents at all. They were ideological surgery. Ideological cleansing. Sometimes assassination isn't about removing a ruler. It's about erasing a past. In 1918, the Bolsheviks executed Tsar Nicholas II and his entire family. Not just the king, not just the heir, everyone. The message wasn't political, it was final. No Romanovs meant no restoration, no symbols, no maybe one day. This was ideological cauterization. The Russian Empire couldn't come back because its bloodline no longer existed. That cleared the ground for something entirely new. The Soviet Union wasn't just a new government, it was a new reality, built on different rules of property, labor, faith, and power. By eliminating the dynasty, the Bolsheviks forced the population to accept that history itself had ended. There was no return path. Anthropologists call this dynastic extinction, and it's brutally effective. When people can imagine a return to the old ruler, resistance survives. When that option is murdered, adaptation begins. The assassination reshaped the 20th century. Cold War blocs, nuclear standoffs, proxy wars on every continent. One basement execution didn't just end a family, it killed an empire's memory. But not all assassinations are internal revolutions. Some are foreign policy delivered by knife. Accelerated imperialism. Sometimes assassination isn't chaos, it's policy. In 1895, Queen Min of Korea was murdered by Japanese agents inside her own palace. This wasn't a coup gone wrong, it was calculated removal. Queen Min was the brain of Korean resistance, balancing Russia, China, and Japan to protect independence. Japan didn't invade first, it decapitated leadership. Her death shattered court unity, destroyed diplomatic resistance, and paralyzed the state. Within 15 years, Korea was annexed. No long war, no heroic last stand, just administrative absorption. This is assassination as imperial shortcut. Why fight an army when you can erase the person holding it together? Historians call this asymmetric decapitation, a single murder achieving what armies might fail to do for decades. Japan didn't just gain territory, it gained confidence. Korea became the launchpad for Japan's expansion into Manchuria and China, reshaping East Asia for half a century. One body removed, an empire accelerated. This is the darkest lesson of royal assassination. Sometimes the dagger is cheaper than diplomacy and faster than conquest. But even when foreign enemies don't strike, empires can still destroy themselves after a killing. Succession chaos. In empires without rules, death doesn't end reigns, it starts wars. When power is personal and inheritance is unclear, assassination triggers succession chaos, and chaos eats empires alive. The Inca Empire shows this perfectly. Around 1527, Emperor Huayna Capac died suddenly, likely from smallpox brought by Europeans. No assassin with a blade, just biology. The effect was the same. His death ignited a civil war between his sons, Atahualpa and Huáscar. Armies split. Nobles chose sides. Resources were burned fighting each other instead of defending borders. By the time Francisco Pizarro arrived with just 168 men, the empire was already bleeding out. Pizarro didn't conquer the Inca Empire. He walked into a power vacuum soaked in blood. This is the hidden danger of royal death. The killing itself may be quick, but the aftermath is slow, grinding destruction. Assassination turns legitimacy into a question, and questions invite swords. Empires can survive bad rulers. They rarely survive unclear heirs. Most collapses blamed on invaders actually begin with internal succession wars triggered by a single death. The empire doesn't fall to outsiders. It collapses inward first. And sometimes, surviving assassination doesn't weaken a state. It hardens it into something colder. Institutional hardening. When emperors keep getting murdered, states stop pretending to be gentle. During Rome's crisis of the 3rd century, 235 to 284, nearly 20 emperors were assassinated by their own troops. Power became temporary. Loyalty became lethal. The empire responded the only way it could: fear. The Roman state transformed itself. Emperors withdrew from public life. Palaces turned into fortresses. Secret police expanded. The dominate replaced the old system where the emperor was first citizen. Now he was distant, divine, and armored by bureaucracy. This paranoia worked. The Western Empire eventually fell, but the Eastern Roman Empire survived another 1,000 years under this hardened model. Assassination didn't destroy Rome, it reprogrammed it. Surveillance replaced civic trust. Centralization replaced participation. Every later autocracy copied this design. The price was cultural stagnation and social rigidity, but survival was non-negotiable. This is the final irony of royal assassination. The knife meant to end tyranny often builds stronger tyranny in response. Fear becomes policy. Protection becomes oppression, and empires that live long enough often owe their endurance to the assassins they survived. In the end, empires weren't undone by armies, but by what happened when a ruler stopped breathing.